from the Ministry of Home Affairs. According to ATM, the ruling is nothing short of a betrayal of South Africa's sovereignty and is tantamount to allowing dual citizenship without restrictions. ATM National Spokesperson Zaman Chona says the Constitutional Court did not put South African citizens first when taking this decision.
What the Constitutional Court has done is to allow people who have sworn allegiance to a foreign country to enjoy full rights of a South African, including occupying public office. The Constitutional Court's decision has not only misjudged this matter, but has crossed a line, trampling on the will of the people and what is in their best interest. By striking down this law, the court has set a dangerous precedent, one that seeks to erode our national identity and leaving us exposed to foreign influences that could undermine our hard-won freedom.
The foreign ministers of Iceland, Luxembourg, Norway, Slovenia and Spain have expressed grave concern about the reported Israeli plans to expand its military operations in Gaza. The 5 countries say a further military escalation in Gaza will only exacerbate an already catastrophic situation for the Palestinians. They say this threatens the lives of hostages that remain in captivity. Kaelihle Kumalo has the story.
The 5 European countries say they reject any demographic and territorial change in Gaza planned to facilitate the permanent displacement of its population, which should be in violation of international law. They also strongly oppose a system that does not ensure that the entire population gets access to humanitarian aid. The 5 nations say Gaza is an integral part of the state of Palestine, which belongs to the Palestinians. For more than 2 months, Israeli authorities have blocked all humanitarian aid and commercial supplies from reaching people in Gaza.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And in our sports headlines, defending CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations champions will be eliminated if they don't win against the Democratic Republic of Congo today. And the Masters champion Rory McIlroy is ready to move on and start at this week's PGA Trust Championship. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Figile Lingwati with our sports headlines and Jolani Tulongwebe with our news update. It is 12:07 Central African Time and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, an OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za as well as on the SABC Plus app available on the Apple and Google Play stores. And join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 4069126 hashtag Africa Update and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Mali has suspended political activities across the country ahead of a planned protest against the military junta that has ruled since coups in the years 2020 and 2021. The West African countries' political parties are demanding a return to constitutional order and a presidential election and are expected to gather for a demonstration tomorrow. The junta originally committed to holding elections in February 2022, but that timeline has been pushed back several times. And to discuss this further, we have on the line political analyst Professor Begim Gomezulu. Prof, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Sis Lulu. Good afternoon to our listeners and thank you for having me.
Now, Prof, what do you make of this suspension? Exactly how should it be read?
No, it shouldn't come as a surprise, more especially given what you've just said in your introductory remarks when indicating that there was a coup within a coup in 2020, 2021, within a short space of time, which reminded us of what has been happening in Nigeria in the past before the return to civilian rule. So this decree by General Goita should not surprise us because we understand that a few days ago he had been nominated and suggested to be the next president after they had failed to convene an election or to organize an election by February 2022, as you indicated. So now basically when these other political parties now demanded that they should return to civilian rule, then Goita felt threatened, and therefore him and then together with those who are in his inner circle decided that they must then come up with this decree which suspends political activities. So it shouldn't surprise us at all.
Now, what implications will this suspension have?
I'm fearful that it might lead to bloodbath. Because the reason why there was a decree is because already people were calling for a return to civilian rule and then, of course, to embrace the constitution which was suspended. Now that the decree has been passed, it means that the military junta will then be tough on those who are defying the decree. And then on the other hand, those who are for democratic elections will also want to intensify their struggle and then put more pressure on the military junta to make sure that the date comes closer, even though they are looking at the 31st of December as the latest date. But I think that retaliation by the military junta when people are doing on the streets will then lead to bloodbath, like we just saw in Kenya recently with this with this bill which was going to change some issues on the financial sector. So I'm fearful that there might be unnecessary bloodbath again at the time when West Africa is not necessarily stable at the moment, looking at what has been happening recently in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and the like.
Just speaking of doing, these opposition parties now are reportedly planning a rally in Bamako that is planned for tomorrow. Does this not defy the suspension of political activities and thus the possibility of bloodbaths taking place?
Yes, Lulu, that's exactly where my fear comes from, because General Goita has already passed this decree or signed this decree, which means it is now in force. Because unlike a bill which goes through the parliamentary processes, if you sign a decree, it is effective immediately. Just like what we have been seeing in America with President Trump signing all these orders. Immediately when you sign, then it becomes effective. So in this case, basically what it means is that the decree is now in place. Anyone who does something to the contrary is in defiance of the decree, in which case then the military junta will then feel justified to then go and repel that. And repelling would definitely mean that we fight those who are calling for the return to civilian rule, and in the process then innocent lives might be lost. That is where my fear comes from.
And a national conference, Prof, that has been organized by Mali's military junta had recommended that General Assimi Goita remain as president until the year 2030 and that all political parties be dissolved. Is this not a blow to democracy in Mali? And you touched on it very slightly earlier when you spoke about the regional bloc as a whole and what's been happening over time in that bloc and just the impact of instability in Mali and then obviously filtering through to the rest of the bloc.
Yes, absolutely. ECOWAS is forced to put off fires left, right, and center. And that is not good for the continent's development and for the region's development, in this case, West Africa. Because instead of ECOWAS focusing on development issues, on improving the economy of the region, they are now forced to use whatever resources they have to try and contain the volatile political situation. So from ECOWAS side, that is not necessarily good. Then when it comes to this conference this national conference of this aligned to the junta, it is not representative. That is where the concern is. Because the people of Mali are saying that, yes, of course, you had a meeting and you deliberated and you came up with the name of former Vice President Assimi Goïta to be the president in a civilian rule for 5 years. And then the problem is that we as the Malians were not represented in that particular meeting. Therefore, whatever decision you arrived at is not necessarily binding to us as the Malians. Then the military junta is saying that we are the ones in charge of the country currently, and therefore we are taking decisions on your behalf. Now that you are making noise, we are passing a decree. Anyone who is defying this decree will face the music. So basically it's us and them, and it's not good for Mali, and by implication, it's not good for ECOWAS.
We've seen the cutting of ties with traditional Western partners, and they forged closer relations with Russia. What do you make of this? And this is a move that Burkina Faso has already made. All the blocs that had coups and coup attempts, this has been the result, the forging of relations with Russia and cutting ties with the traditional Western partners.
Yes, indeed. This is bound to happen. There was a time when we had a bipolar world with America dominating the Western Bloc, and then a Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, now Russia, dominating the Eastern Bloc. But then later on, we then moved to a multipolar world, to a unipolar world where America was the dominant factor. Then right now, there is now a resurgence of the other role players coming into the picture. Russia is regaining momentum. China is regaining momentum. There are other role players, which then gives an indication that we might be moving now back to a multipolar world. Now, in terms of relations between Russia and America, they are currently strained. George W. Bush might have caused damage, but President Trump is causing even more damage, which then means now that America might in fact be ostracized by a number of African countries. In this case, we are talking about Ibrahim Traore, who has in fact indicated that he's not going to bow down to America, even declining an invitation to go to America, and is on record saying that the resources of Burkina Faso are for the people of Burkina Faso and for the people of the African continent. So he is not going to allow Trump to bully him, and therefore is moving to the east. And many other African countries are doing the same thing, which means therefore that Russia might then have an edge over America by virtue of the fact that the current status quo will not be sustained, especially given the fact that Donald Trump has in fact America an enemy to the globe, not just African countries, but also the EU. There are EU member states who are now asking questions if indeed it is okay for them to continue working with America. So those are some of the political dynamics which are likely to see unfolding sooner rather than later.
Now, before I let you go, Prof, just in wrapping up, ECOWAS, does it have the teeth to manage the crisis in Mali? We've seen their reaction previously with the other countries, and the African Union, where do they stand? Because they also need to get involved in this, because it impacts not only just the regional bloc, but the continent as a whole.
In fact, it's even better when it comes to ECOWAS. ECOWAS has a teeth when compared to the AU. The AU has become toothless. And the reason for that is the AU is not united. We still have vestiges of the old order, where our African leaders are still basically paying homage to the erstwhile colonizers. They agree on clear policies that will take the continent forward, but when it comes to implementation, they are found wanting simply because they are still too close to their former colonizers. So that is where the problem is.
Well, Prof, thank you so much for your time on Africa Update. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Cecil, for having me, and thank you to your listeners.
That's a political analyst, Professor Begum Gumezulu, joining us on the line. It is 19 after 12 Central African Time.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Ritmos e cultura com o embaixador da...
Now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act.
National Resistance Movement Party's village elections in Kabale municipality have been disrupted by widespread electoral irregularities and chaos at multiple polling stations. Our analysts say the reported incidents highlight deep-rooted concerns about transparency, voter verification, and party membership integrity during the NRM's internal electoral process. Uganda is set to hold general elections in January next year, with President Yoweri Museveni looking to extend his 40-year rule. And to discuss this further, we have on the line our correspondent in Uganda, Mike Arareng. Mike, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much, Lulu, Gaboo, and a very good afternoon.
Mike, tell us more about these disruptions during the NRM village elections.
Oh, yes. The elections actually were held on Monday throughout the country. And it was successful, but with some disruption. More especially, as you mentioned, in Kabale, that is in western Uganda, and of course in Busia district bordering Kenya. Yes, election was cancelled in various villages bordering Kenya after incidents reported of some Kenyans crossing the border in order to participate in the vote exercise of the ruling party in Uganda National Resistance Movement. It is said that hundreds of Kenyan nationals crossed the border to vote in the NRM party election that took place nationwide on Monday. People who live at the border have similarities in culture and also names, making it challenging to distinguish between Ugandan and Kenya citizen. It is believed that polls in 4 villages in Busia district, that is in eastern Uganda, were cancelled due to the illegal participation of foreigners. There was a voter registrar in all 72,000 polling stations across the country. These elections are important for the ruling party, National Resistance Movement, as it prepares itself for the general elections, which are due to be held in April 2026.
Now, Mike, President Yoweri Museveni and the First Lady Janet personally oversaw the verification of the registers in Rwakutiru and Ntungamo, Iringa. Just how significant are these elections? And clearly the alleged involvement or alleged voting of foreigners is also a major issue. Why was this not prevented? What are the challenges on the ground?
Well, the challenges actually was about the voter registrar, because some names never appeared in the voters registrar. Even in my village, where I'm from, that is Buikwe district, most of the people who came to vote
didn't find their names on the voter register. And this actually caused unhappiness to most of the people who were turned away because their names were not appearing in the voters register. But at the same time, I can say that even President Museveni was surprised because even the son of, his grandchildren names never appeared anywhere. So actually, some measures are supposed to be taken against the Electoral Commission to see the way forward that during the general election, this kind of thing does not happen again.
And in terms of measures, what exactly does that mean? Is government going to get involved in this? A political party is going to take the lead, or is the Electoral Commission going to investigate and ensure that this does not happen going forward?
Well, it's actually the Electoral Commission which will conduct an investigation, and as well as the Office of the Inspector General, they are going to conduct an investigation to find out what was the problem. But at the same time, I can say that the elections were meant actually to measure the strength of the ruling party, because as we are going for the elections next year in 2026, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has already announced his intention to seek another term as President of the Republic of Uganda, and now awaits to be approved by the Central Executive Committee of the ruling party, the National Resistance Movement, and I can say that he will be the flag bearer of the ruling party. Other expected to contest include Robert Chagulanyi, popularly known as Bobby Wine, who has also shown interest, and he will be the flag bearer of the National Unity Party, NUP. The former opposition leader, retired Major Dr. Kiza Besigye, who formed a new political party, is still being held in prison for charges of treason. So far, it's only Robert Chagulanyi who is a big threat to President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Robert Chagulanyi, a former musician, has a huge following in central Uganda and among the youth who constitute a big percentage. The roadmap to 2026 election has already witnessed intimidation and fear, more especially to the opposition members. Some kidnappings and illegal detention has been the order of the day to the opposition members.
Now, Mike, we have it on good authority that you were also elected unopposed for the position of vice chairman for the elderly in your village. Congratulations, and tell us more and what your position entails.
Yes, indeed. Actually, I think I'm one of the happiest elderly here in my village. Yes, I was elected and opposed to serve my people in my community. I was elected as vice chairman of the older persons. In the NRM village structures, elders are considered as one of the pillars in ensuring care is taken to the elders. As some of us actually age peaceful, we need that extra care because of the wealth of experience in different aspects of life. We need to guide our community, especially our community, about self-awareness and how to tackle the problem of jobs, wealth creation, and also to give advice to the youth. I will also fight for the increase of older person monthly payment, because at the moment elderly people are paid peanuts, $10. Can you imagine per month, which only can buy 1.5 kilogram of beef?
Well, Michael, congratulations once again, and thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you too, and have a wonderful afternoon.
And thank you to you too, Mike. That's our correspondent in Uganda. That's Mike Arareng joining us on the line. It is 12:29 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our news headlines up next with Jalani Tula.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. Making headlines. Mali's opposition parties are planning countrywide protests tomorrow. The West African country's political parties are demanding a return to constitutional order and a presidential election. UNESCO's head of communication, Al-Amin Yusuf, says while artificial intelligence is transforming media, however, it makes it easier to manipulate people and even violate basic human rights like privacy and freedom of speech. He was speaking at the Southern Africa World Press Freedom Day commemoration in Melrose, Johannesburg in South Africa. Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed Chinese President Xi Jinping on Thursday for talks in the Kremlin. This is ahead of Russia's Victory Day parade tomorrow, where the country will commemorate the victory of the Soviet Union against Nazi Germany in 1945. I'll have details on these and other stories at 1 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Jalani Tulongwepe, for those headlines. I say good afternoon to Figile Lingwati with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon, Lulu. We begin with football news this hour. Defending champion Senegal are on the brink of elimination and must win against the Democratic Republic of Congo today to have any chance of progressing to the quarterfinals at the Total Energies CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. DR Congo, meanwhile, need only a draw to advance. This will be the first ever meeting between the two nations at the finals. Senegal are facing Central African opposition for the fourth time. They previously defeated Cameroon in 2017 and edged Congo 4-3 in 2015. In their current campaign, they drew 1-1 with DRC in their opening match. DR Congo are also encountering West African opponents for the fourth time in the tournament's history. They remain winless in their previous three such encounters. Defending champion Senegal have failed to win either of their opening group matches for the first time since 2015 when they lost to Nigeria and drew with Cote d'Ivoire. If they fail to win this match, Senegal will go winless in the group stage for the third time, 1993 and 1994 previously. Paris Saint-Germain coach Luis Enrique insisted his team deserved their place in the Champions League final and were determined to go on and lift the trophy after winning their last four tie against Arsenal on Wednesday. Goals either side of halftime by Fabian Ruiz and Achraf Hakimi put the French champions out of sight in the tie before Bukayo Saka pulled one back for Arsenal. However, the hosts needed goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma to make several vital saves, and Arsenal coach Mikel Arteta claimed his team had been better over the two legs. Enrique says the goal when he arrived at the club was to make the final of the Champions League.
It means a lot. Everybody is dreaming with getting a Champions League final, and our first goal when we arrived to Paris was to making history, and we are in the right path.
On to cricket news. No matches between India and Pakistan should take place amid the ongoing tensions after the Kashmir military attack, says India men's coach Gautam Gambhir. Says 26 civilians were killed in Indian-administered Kashmir last month, and India has accused Pakistan of supporting militants behind the attack, an allegation Pakistan has rejected. The nations currently only play each other in global events because of long-standing tensions and are due to meet at the Women's World Cup later this year. Meanwhile, top-order batter Shubman Gill and pace spearhead Jasprit Bumrah are locked in two-horse race to be India's next Test captain following Rohit Sharma's exit. Rohit was dropped from the fifth Test in Sydney earlier this year after a prolonged run drought and announced his retirement from Test cricket. Bumrah, who captained India in Perth, where they registered their only victory of the Australian series, is a choice, but doubts linger given the injury risks for fast bowlers. Former India captain Anil Kumble would like to see Bumrah captain India in their tour of England in June-July with Gill as his deputy. The 5-Test series kicks off India's new World Test Championship cycle. The 31-year-old Bumrah's workload, however, is likely to tilt the balance in favour of Gill, who has proved his leadership quality in the ongoing IPL, where he has led Gujarat Titans to the top of the points table. Let's end with golf news. It's a Masters Grand Slam and the end of 10-year drought for Rory McIlroy, who is ready to move on starting at this week's PGA Trust Championship. A 36-year-old from Northern Ireland has won the event 4 times at Quail Hollow, but this year the event has been moved to Philadelphia Cricket Club because next week's PGA Championship, the year's second major event, is being played there. McIlroy, who celebrated a birthday last Sunday, played alongside Ireland's Shane Lowry at a pairs event 2 weeks ago, but this marks his solo PGA return as well as the last tune up for the PGA Championship. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, File Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu, Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:36 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Business news up next with Thabiso Lohuku.
Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks.
Thanks to Lulu, and good afternoon. A CEO of Barrick Mining, Mark Bristow, says that the Canadian company is spending $15 million a month to keep its Mali mine running and doesn't know where Mali's government is keeping the gold. In an interview about the long-running conflict with authorities in the West African nation, Bristow said the government there had walked back on an agreement to settle a tax dispute 3 times and called the jailing of Barrick employees in the country a human rights violation. Sisi Sekhalo reports.
Barrick and Mali's government have been locked in a dispute for more than 6 months over the Lulu Gungoto complex, Barrick's largest mine in Mali. In addition to arresting the 4 Barrick employees, authorities confiscated around 3 metric tons of gold in January following accusations that Barrick was not in compliance with its tax obligations, prompting the miner to shut down the mine. Based on the current gold price, the value of the confiscated gold is around $318 million.
The G20 member states are expected to hold their second meeting today in South Africa's Northwest Province on the empowerment of women working group. This is ahead of the G20 presidency that South Africa will assume from the 1st of December. The meeting will hear feedback on care economy, paid and unpaid and care work, financial inclusion of women and gender-based violence and femicide. The World Bank stressed that access to finance must be coupled with skills development. Senior Knowledge Officer Felicia Siegrist elaborates.
Evidence also shows that access to finance interventions is not enough to improve business growth for women entrepreneurs, but they must be combined with access to skills interventions, such as training, as well as access to markets interventions.
Guinea has initiated a process to revoke Emirates Global Aluminium's mining license in the West African nation. Emirates Global Aluminium, equally owned by Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, Mubadala, and Dubai Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Investment Corporation of Dubai, operates one of the largest bauxite mines in Guinea through its Guinea Alumina Corporation subsidiary. The company says it continues to work hard to find a resolution with the government to resume operations. The United States and Britain are expected to announce a deal to lower tariffs on some goods on Thursday, the first such agreement since US President Donald Trump imposed levies on countries around the world. A British government spokesperson says Prime Minister Keir Starmer will give an update on US-UK trade talks later today. The two sides are working to agree lower tariff quotas on steel and autos, two sectors that were hit by 25% US levies. A study by the European Central Bank ECB has revealed that foreign workers accounted for much of the Eurozone's economic growth since the COVID-19 pandemic and could help the bloc overcome the economic constraints of an aging and shrinking labour market. The ECB says the foreigners accounted for half of the bloc's labour force growth in the past 3 years, helping to alleviate labour shortages and starting to make a greater contribution in higher skills jobs too, as their education levels are improving. The study further reveals that the influx of foreign workers in recent years has secured a robust growth in the euro area labour force. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 606, Botswana 13 pula 47, Kenya 128 shilling 43, and Zambia 29 kwacha 95. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 riyal 72. In Russia, 80 rubles 94. India, 84 rupees 70. China, 7 yuan 22. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 18 rand 23. Is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 88 to the euro. A look at commodities markets. Gold is trading at $3,341 and platinum at $972 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $61.39 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
The world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future.
Well, thank you, Thabiso, for that business update. It is 12:42 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, South Africa's President, Cyril Ramaphosa, has announced that major reforms to the country's visa system, including the implementation of recommendations from the Work Visa Review to a new electronic travel authorization system and a points-based system aimed at attracting skilled professionals and investors, while strengthening measures to curb illegal immigration are underway. Ramaphosa was speaking at the launch of the second phase of Operation Vulindlela, a joint initiative of the Presidency and National Treasury to accelerate the implementation of structural reforms and support economic recovery. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has the story.
South Africa's Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Leon Schreiber, gazetted visa reforms in October 2024, which constitute another success under Operation Vulindlela. These reforms seek to remove bureaucratic hurdles and are designed to make it easier for South African companies and multinationals to hire skilled workers, as well as making South Africa a realistic prospect to remote workers seeking an opportunity to combine work with tourism. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has affirmed a full implementation for visa regime recommendations.
Now, on the visa system, we will ensure that the recommendations of the Work Visa Review are fully implemented and introduce an electronic travel authorization system to support growth in tourism. But also to support growth in those who want to come and invest in our country.
He says the Ministry of Home Affairs has already implemented some of the key reforms.
The Minister of Home Affairs has already introduced a points-based system to make it easier for highly skilled people who want to come into our country, people who have skills, who have money, to come into our country with ease, who can contribute to our economy, while at the same time enforcing our immigration laws more effectively, particularly to combat illegal immigration.
The strengthening of local government is also part of the focus area in the second phase of the initiative.
The second area of reform for this phase of Operation Vulindlela 2 is to improve the performance of local government. Many of our municipalities are unable to deliver basic services to households and businesses. Now, Operation Vulindlela has set out a clear agenda for local government reform, which starts with improving the delivery of water, electricity services through professional utilities. Utilities should have the right technical skills, they should have strong regulation and oversight, and they should be rid of any form of corruption as well.
Minister in the Presidency Kumbudzo Nchaveni concurs with Ramaphosa on local government, which has failed to deliver basic services.
Operation Vulindlela Phase 2 will unleash a second wave of reforms, and this will extend the agenda into the areas of local government, which has been a major challenge in the country as it relates to service delivery, spatial inequality, and the digital transformation as we come into reality of the digital age.
She says the initiative is positioned with the statement of intent contained in the Government of National Unity.
The work of Operation Vulindlela is fully aligned to the minimum program of the Government of National Unity as reflected in the statement of intent, including to achieve more rapid, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, to create a more just society by tackling poverty and spatial inequalities, and to stabilize local government, and to build state capacity and create a professional, merit-based, corruption-free and developmental public service.
South Africa's Minister of Finance, Enoch Gonongwana, has called for procurement reforms in government.
Without demanding from my DG, I think one of the issues that need to be part of this restructuring is procurement reforms. Quite a challenge with the reform agenda with the procurement in government. Government will also be prioritizing improving the effectiveness and efficiency of spending by making progress on the implementation of spending reviews.
Business has welcomed the reforms, specifically on the visa reforms. Business Leadership South Africa's Chief Executive Officer is Bosisiwe Mavuson.
I think the one key issue as well that the President, I think, emphasized, which we've been very keen on as the business community, is that of the visa reform. We've been talking about the visa reform for quite some time. You know, I remember at some point, it must have been in 2023, where we had the CEO of Nestle in this country, who was stuck outside of South Africa, I think it was in Switzerland somewhere, for more than 6 months without having gotten his visa.
She says people go through painful experiences with their visa applications and commended the Home Affairs Ministry's work.
You know, when you listen to people who are interested in coming into the country, who are interested in investing in the country, they will tell you that they normally have to wait for a year to get work visas. So we are very encouraged about the acceleration that we've seen from Dr. Schreiber, you know, who is the Minister of Home Affairs, who has now put in place the Trusted Employer Scheme. The Trusted Employer Scheme is a scheme that companies can belong to so that if they want to bring experts into the country, if they want to get work visas, it reduces the process from the 9 months to the 6 weeks.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Africa Update on Channel Africa. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K,
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led.
It is 12:49 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our Feed Our Kids, a non-profit organization in South Africa, has raised concerns on the impact delayed payments to school feeding scheme providers has on children who rely on the system to get their meals. This is the light in light of the situation in the country's KwaZulu-Natal province, where children have been unable to get food due to this delay. The organization is sounding the alarm on a deeper crisis. Children are being denied both education and the one nutritious meal they rely on each day. Tutongobeni compiled this report.
For many learners, especially from under-resourced communities, the school feeding scheme is not just a meal, it's their only guarantee of food for the day. Feed Our Kids says the failure of the system results in children suffering the most. Recent reports regarding delayed payments to school feeding scheme providers in the KwaZulu-Natal province and the ongoing challenges in communities like the Gauteng province's Deep Sloot area, where children have been turned away from schools due to overcrowding and infrastructure issues, is an alarming issue. Spokesperson at Feed Our Kids, Huizimang Matlabe, says they are advocating for government to prioritize the provision of healthy and nutritious meals in schools.
So Feed Our Kids is a non-profit organization that has been advocating for the provision of healthy and nutritious food for our kids. Now, our focus has obviously gone on a number of initiatives, but the biggest being the National School Nutrition Program, because it caters for as many as 10 million children. And our biggest thing is what are those children being fed? Because as it stands, we have a crisis where millions of South African children, I think as many as 27%, according to UNICEF, that are stunted and malnourished. And that has a significant impact on our kids, not just for the time being, but for their development and their future. And that is why, as an organization, we have been advocating for entities such as government to prioritize what it is that our children are getting, particularly at school.
Matlabe says the issue of food delays doesn't only affect the KwaZulu-Natal province, but have seen similar cases in the Gauteng province, which Matlabe says is a great cause of concern as children suffer, and particularly the impact this has on their development.
Now, what we are seeing with the KZN is that we have service providers that are alleging that they haven't been paid to obviously supply food to the schools in months. They decided then to protest outside the district offices in that province in particular. However, the issue of delayed foods and subpar foods doesn't just affect KwaZulu-Natal alone. I mean, in Gauteng, we had the delivery of food delayed because suppliers opted to take the provincial department in Gauteng to court. They were alleging that there were some irregularities and possible corruption in the appointment of the service providers.
And that report by Tuto Ngobeni. It is 12:52 Central African Time.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
The British High Commissioner in South Africa, Anthony Phillipson, has offered an apology to South Africa's opposition party leader, Julius Malema, of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Malema took to social media to express his frustration following the UK Home Office's failure to process his visa application. Malema was invited by the African Society of Cambridge University to address its 11th annual Cambridge Africa Together conference this coming weekend. And to talk to us further on this, we are joined on the line by a political and governance analyst from the Centre of Strategic Leadership, Sandile Swana. Sandile, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Oh, thank you so much.
Now, what do you make of this saga, so to speak, that has transpired relating the visa debacle and Julius Malema?
The saga First of all, the explanations given by the British that they had banking holidays and other things, which means that it was the inefficiency of the process on their side of the British that caused this. At face value, needs to be acknowledged. However, with the current tensions in South Africa, one worries whether the British are perhaps in any way supportive of the Trump and Make America Great movement of targeting certain prominent politicians in South Africa for certain unfavorable actions, sanctions and other things. So it comes at a very most unfortunate time. The British have always prided themselves of being extraordinarily efficient and competent. The excuses that they've given this time, the reasons for the failure, are inconsistent with their historical profile that they've tried to project across Africa, their excellence and proficiency in all things that pertain to matters of this nature.
Now, let's speak about the EFF leader's reaction, him taking his frustrations to social media. And how would you describe now the relationship with the United Kingdom going forward? Because now, I guess it highlights a number of possibilities that a lot of politicians or people who have spoken out against, the so-called Western powers in a certain way and advocate for certain things, whether we speak about the land issue and so on. Are we going to see more of these happening, facing a lot of political leaders in the country?
The first thing that I would like to highlight is that the British and the Americans have not yet have not seen reports affecting the continental Europeans, where there are political interference with the academic world, where top universities are appearing not to no longer have the freedom to engage in freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of thought. We've seen this with Harvard in the United States right now. And I hope that what we're seeing is not a repression of Cambridge University and people of that kind, entities of that kind in the UK. Also, we are not clear as to whether there is a coordinated effort between the Make America Great Again movement and the UK, as they've always been allies, to act against people of the third world and Africans in particular, who are standing against Western imperialism, including the genocide in Gaza, including the land question in South Africa, and so on and so forth.
Well, Sandile, we will leave it here for today because of time, and thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
That was a political and governance analyst from the Center of Strategic Leadership, Sandile Swana, joining us on the line. It is 12:57 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. And we say a happy Thursday and good afternoon to Dabukhole Kuleni from the Upside team. Hello, how
are you? Good afternoon. I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
So what's coming up on the show this afternoon? We honor those who walked before us, Ancestors Day, and we unpack the power of street photography as well in shaping African corporate identity, and then get a bit stylishly smart with the fashion startup using AI to rescue billions in wasted clothes. So when there's an overstocking in any luxury store, this particular company takes that and then sells it, resells it to different markets where that particular business is not able to take care of them. And then, it's $1 billion wastage, apparently.
Excess stock.
excess stock. Excess stock. And so this business is saying, listen, no, we're not wasting anymore. We're not going to throw it to the side. We found a way to sell it to just about anyone who needs it. So those are the conversations coming up. And as always, amazing banter between myself and Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
And don't miss out on that banter and more coming up at the top of the hour on The Upside with Dabukhole Kuleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. For myself, Lulu, Gaboo, and the Africa Update team, it's been a good one. Let's do this again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Can run and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging